Hello and welcome to UD TV. Today, Bob and I have the opportunity to be talking with you about how people who are not diabetics can be living with and impacted by diabetes. Our guest today is Dawn Jarvis. She is known as the Diverse Nurse. She is the founder and CEO of Dawn Jarvis Limited and a diversity and inclusion strategist, international speaker, executive coach, author, founder of the Diverse Nurse Network, and creator of the Dawn Jarvis Show podcast. Her work has been featured in BBC, Yanga TV, The Independent, Talk Radio, Nursing Times, and Nursing Standard and Professional Nurse. Dawn helps executives and organizations and individuals implement strategies and best practices to transform strategy into action. Dawn is also living with and impacted by diabetes. As the mother of Noah Jarvis, a type 1 diabetic who is challenging his diabetes and living an uncommon diabetic life as a professional rugby player in the UK. So today, we're going to discuss with Dawn how diabetes impacts the family, friends, and colleagues of people living with diabetes. We're going to get her insights and Bob's as professional healthcare worker and the diverse nurse. So, welcome, Dawn. Thank you for joining us today for this episode of UD TV.
Hello. So lovely to be here and welcome everybody.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Dawn.
You're very welcome. I'm very glad to be here.
Good. You're talking to us from the UK today.
Yes.
So it's been just a terrific career that you've had. What are you doing these days? Tell us a bit about your new ventures.
So I left the National Health Service in England last year, and since then I have been working as a management consultant, a diversity and inclusion strategist. I work with organisations, some healthcare organisations, charities. And today I worked with a record company and I talked to them about diversity and inclusion and how they can make that work in practice, how they can engage their workforce and also work with their clients around that. I also focus on health and well-being generally, and I do my podcast, as you mentioned. I do that with entrepreneurs and focus on their health and well-being.
Excellent. Nice. Nice to have you with us today.
No, for sure. We're so grateful for your time today. We know how busy you are. And, we've had so many great conversations, and I've had the privilege of meeting Noah and being able to, be involved a little bit in his life and his journey and with you as well as we're developing our friendship relationship. And I can't even explain it in words, the impact that diabetes has, not just on the diabetic, but on those living with and impacted by diabetes, the supporters, the friends, the colleagues, even the healthcare professionals that we have to go to as part of our team so that we can live with this condition in an uncommon manner. So
definitely.
What I really hope is that we could just discuss a little bit today, and if you could share your story about how you are living with and impacted by diabetes.
Okay, that's a big question. So when I was working for the health service, one of the jobs I did was commissioning health services, and diabetes is a massive cost to the National Health Service or any healthcare system. So obviously I was impacted there. I commissioned, secured or purchased children's services, so it was around pediatric diabetes, but the organisation I worked for, that a lot of their spend, both in sort of like pharmaceuticals and time, clinician time, nursing time, was around diabetes, all the things that impact that diabetes impacts. So that would be things like obesity, sort of like disabilities that may be caused by diabetes, eyesight, all sorts of things came into that. And if you look at it from a health economic model, it would be better to, instead of treating the impact of diabetes, it was better to prevent it, and than to do that, because it costs such a lot of money and such a lot of time, and people would be healthier and happier, particularly with type 2 diabetes, if it could be prevented. And I think there is something about how people live with type 1 diabetes. So my story with Noah is that he was diagnosed when he was, I think he was 22 actually when he was diagnosed. What he went on holiday, he went to Spain. He had a slight injury, he had a fall, and he wasn't very well, felt very tired, was very thirsty, lost a lot of weight. And when he came home, he just became really, really unwell. He wasn't at home at the time. They called an ambulance and took him to the emergency room, and he's in his friend called me and said, Noah's in hospital, I think you should come. And I was about to go to an appointment. I was thinking, oh, okay, I better go. And I went there. When I arrived at the hospital, Noah looked at death's door, and it was very shocking. He'd lost at least, oh goodness, I can't say, I don't know what the kilograms is, but he'd lost 3 stone, which is 14 times 3, about 45 pounds worth in weight. He was totally dehydrated. He was in ketoacidosis. It was like he had gone into shock. It was horrendous. And when I was practicing clinically as a nurse, I was an intensive care nurse, and I knew this was very, very serious. And actually, one of the first things that the doctor said to me, is he a diabetic? I'm like, no, he's not a diabetic. And then it became really clear that this was the root cause of the problem. And it was very, very serious. He was in intensive care, and it rocked his world. It rocked all of our worlds, but it particularly rocked his world. He was very successful as a rugby player. He had everything set up. He's gorgeous. The whole way he lived his life, that diabetes wasn't part of it. And when he was first diagnosed, we were hoping it was type 2, and that if he could lose a bit of weight, we could sort this out. But it was type 1, and we just couldn't understand how this had happened. But as his mother and as a nurse, I thought back. I remember one of the doctors telling me, you probably always was a diabetic. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they said because he was fit, that he'd probably compensated for all of the things, like he eats like a horse anyway. He was always, I remember when he was 4, he used to drink every 45 minutes. And I remember when he went to school, I said to him, he eats a lot, I'm really worried it's going to last till lunchtime. And they laughed at me. I actually took him to the doctors to talk about, because he ate so much food, and they thought it was me, and so I forgot all about it. But when he was diagnosed, I thought about all of these things, that sometimes he was really, really tired, that he was, sometimes he was really unwell, but for no apparent reason. And as a children's nurse, because I am actually a trained children's nurse, I felt guilty. That he'd had diabetes all his life, and I hadn't noticed. That I'm a children's nurse and I hadn't noticed. So there was a lot of guilt around that, and then there was a lot of helping him come to terms with this massive change to his life, and the massive way that it had to be managed, the testing. And he didn't want to be a diabetic. He literally said, I don't want to be a diabetic. I don't want to do it. I don't want to look at what I eat. I don't want to have to think about this. And that was he's nearly 25 now. So we're sort of 2.5 years in, and we're only just getting there with him, thinking about what he eats.
How are you doing? How are you doing with the guilt now after all these years?
It comes and goes, because we'll probably come on to talk about this. I am his mother, but I'm also a healthcare professional, and he is an adult. He's not a child, and I'm a children's nurse, and that's that. As a children's nurse, you work with the parents around that. If he'd been diagnosed when he was 5, we'd be in a totally different situation now. That he's a man with his own agency, he can make his own decisions. And I know from my nursing experience and about compliance with treatment, it's about your own health beliefs and what you think is true or what you want to be true, and how you manage it. And you have to come to the decisions about how you manage your illness in your own way and your own time. So that is so as a professional, I'm not his nurse, I'm his mother. So there's a bit of tension there. And but I have a nurse's brain. I have I was trained in a biomedical model. I know how things work.
It's still impacting you all these years later, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing about diabetes. It's such a hidden, insidious thing, right? I've raised 3 kids and they were sick a lot, right? And I never in a million years would have even said maybe it's diabetes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, kids are sick all the time. They're up, they're down, blah, blah, blah. And we're so busy raising them, right?
Yeah.
So, but thanks for being so transparent about this. Yeah, and chatting about it, because I think that's everyone deals with that. Just guilt. It just, and it eats it, it's just there.
You know what you said is pretty powerful, and I'm grateful for your vulnerability. I've had the privilege of getting to know Noah, and I shared with him my story, which is almost a mirror image of his.
Yeah.
I was 25, right?
Yeah.
And I also, and it's very common. So just as a quick point before we go into this, the emotions and the mindset, is that people need to be aware that an illness, an injury, a car accident, an emotional, so it's both physical, mental, and emotional, could be environmental, any of the 5 stresses that affect us in life that can actually trigger this. So if you've had an illness, a sickness, an injury, and you just don't seem to be recovering, you need to check and make sure that your blood sugars are in a line, because the autoimmune that triggers diabetes, it's underlying. Like Noah, I was the same. I think it was just my extreme athletic lifestyle, the things that I was doing that held it off. But the medical procedure I had pushed my immune system over the edge. And then that's what triggered it. And like Noah, I had 40 pounds in a month I lost. 47. So in North America, 47 A1C. I had organs shutting down. All of it went blind into a coma. It was dramatic. When you become a type 1, it's not a gentle entry into diabetes.
No.
However, it does impact us all. I was an angry bird when I was told I was a diabetic, because I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I was an athlete, I was fit, and now you tell me I'm this? What did I do wrong? My family was running, all the same emotions impacts all of us, right, Bob? And it really impacts our family, friends, colleagues far more than what we as the diabetics even think, because of the very thing you talked about, our emotions, right? Because emotion drives our motion in life and our mindset. And that's as the diabetic, but also for the family, because they're wanting to help so much. But the truth is, as you so well said about Noah, it's actually about the diabetic having to be accountable for how they're thinking about their food. I don't want, well, too bad. You don't have a choice. Whether you like it or not, this is your life. So sooner we can accept it, the easier it's going to be, not just for me, but for all of those that I'm impacting in my life. So that I really wanted to share and really support that emotion you're feeling, the emotions that myself and Noah and all those that are, whether it's type 2, type 1, and you're diagnosed, it will throw your mindset upside down. It'll question your beliefs. So can you maybe step into that a little bit with us? And how do our beliefs affect our emotions and therefore our actions in life when we're living with and impacted by diabetes?
I think from Noah's point of view and from my point of view, so from Noah's point of view, what I observed is what he believed. He led quite a charmed life. He was popular, had lots of friends. His girlfriend is beautiful. and everyone likes him, and he didn't have a problem. Really, he wanted to play rugby, and he was playing rugby, and happy days, really. He got an international cap, for Jamaica, and things were going well.
He had you as a mom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so he had a lot of things in his favor, but what Heath said, we had a sudden and shocking bereavement before he was diagnosed, and that had a massive impact on him. And I suppose he, when you're 22, you think you're invincible, don't you, really? And you never think. I remember when I was 22, I never thought I'd be 54. That was just not in my head, but that I couldn't even imagine being 28, never mind 54. So so he lived a charmed life. I used to call him a prince, and then to have this devastating for him diagnosis, and there's no one you can necessarily so he went into himself a lot, and that was difficult because I couldn't reach him. And he won't mind me saying that he was depressed, he was angry. The people around him that he was playing rugby with could have been more supportive. And I, as his mother, I knew these people, but it's different when you're advocating for a child than when you're advocating for a man with other men. So, I didn't feel that I could sort of go in there and say, he needs this, he needs that, he needs this, because he wasn't acknowledging it, never mind them, so it caused problems with his employment because he worked part-time in a restaurant. He got dropped, which affected his self-esteem, and that could have been managed better. I tried all the things. Like, I'm a nurse, and part of my job is to help people with their health education and stuff like that. We talked about coaching, sort of like mindset coaching, role models. There's a rugby player in England that is a type 1 diabetic, but he wasn't interested because he was having his own grief and mourning around his previous life. And he had to go through that. I investigated what was the best thing, what was the best thing that the research was available on the NHS, because we have a similar payment system to you guys in Canada, and I could use my influence to get all of that, but he didn't comply, and it wasn't, and there was nothing I could do. And even now, it's a constant sort of like, so Noah lives at home with me now. His relationship broke up. He didn't, he left his job. He changed rugby teams. It had a massive, massive impact. We're on the way up now, but it's been a long journey. And I suppose as his mother, it's difficult to watch.
I'm very curious from both of you, Bob, because you've been in my life now for almost 30 years, right? My whole journey as a diabetic. And I think diabetes is truly the hidden condition, because when people look at me as an example, they don't go diabetic, right? Because they view diabetes as obesity. They view it as someone who's very sedentary and not active. But it's far, far different than that. Yes, that's a segment of it. And we're at all of us, just like non-diabetics, our weight goes up, our weight goes down through seasons of life, where we're at mentally, physically. What's our food? Are we traveling a lot? All kinds of circumstances drive our health. But because it's not seen, Bob is a witness, I think, in my life, and it's a question to you. Mm-hmm. I can behave a little bit crazy sometimes. All of a sudden, it's like I just have an emotional trigger that will go off. And because I missed a few of my symptoms, I missed a blood test, there's different things, or I forgot to eat, or whatever it might be. Yeah. How has that impacted you, Bob, in dealing with me and even your own emotions
Mhm.
with me at times as us working together where I may be behaving and it's strictly a diabetes issue, but we're both thinking it's just could be Heath being grumpy pants.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. It's kind of a hidden thing, and even though I know you're diabetic or I know people are diabetic, you're just interacting with them as you would a normal person, right? But the things that are going on inside, they're dealing with their blood sugar issues, dealing with their anxiety, dealing with their depression, dealing with their stress. You can't see any of that stuff. It's hard enough in life just with a person that doesn't have diabetes, right? We're just normal relationships. And all of a sudden you've got this added feature in a person's life that makes it more challenging. There's much more challenge involved. So at any moment of the day, I could be speaking with Heath and he could be losing focus. He could be getting sleepy. He could be getting cranky. He can be getting angry, right? And it's just not, it's really not him. It's the diabetes. And that's the big learning curve, I think, for a person with new diabetic in their life is like this person's emotions are literally being run by their blood sugar levels, right?
True.
So it's, there's much less control than a normal person would have, a non-diabetic, I should say.
So I really appreciate you sharing that. It leads to a real point, and that is that something you said just before this segue was there's a mourning. Because when we're told that day one, doesn't matter how, but we're advised, hey, you better change your health. You have insulin resistance and you're on the road to type 2 diabetes. Or, sir, you are a diabetic, or ma'am, you are type 2 diabetes. You need to use these drugs. Or you're type 1. It doesn't matter. You're diagnosed. The old Heath, I had to put to bed and allow to pass before I could embrace the new Heath I had to be.
And I would add that because everybody now in Heath's circle have to put the old Heath to bed too.
Yeah.
And that's the missing part. That's the hard part is like, we just see the old Heath. We don't see the new Heath. We don't see what's going on inside. It's totally hidden. So that's the complication is there's really a new Heath there.
Yes. And I think for Noah and his and my conversations, the hardest thing to realize for me was that I wasn't alone.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm surrounded by friends, family, colleagues that want to understand what's going on in my head, in my heart, what's going on with my food. Why am I, this way or that way? If I'm not willing to share who I really am and what's going on, there's no way for anyone to really help me because I'm refusing that. And that kind of leads to that whole aspect that you were talking about, is that we have to embrace the new life, the diabetic life, because if we can't accept, we cannot change. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. And I also would agree that it's really important to let people know why you might be behaving like this, why you might have these mood swings. And even as somebody who knows this, it's really, really hard sometimes because, one of the discussions I have with Noah is that you are a diabetic, and that is the reason that you might feel like this, but it doesn't. But I say to him, you need to sort it out. If the problem that you've got is related to your diabetes, then you need to sort it out. You need to see a doctor. You need to, if you're tired because of, you've been unwell, because you either missed your insulin, not taken too much insulin, had a low or whatever, sort it out. And that is the tension, is that a part of that acceptance is that that accountability is that, yes, these things happen, and definitely they can happen unexpectedly. We're all human. But one of the things that I advise about everything is, what is happening when you're feeling good. so that you know when you're not feeling good, what's happening, that's different, and to tell other people the exact same thing, so that if you are drifting, if you are tired, if you are grumpy, could it be down to the diabetes, and then what are we going to do? So this is a bit of my sort of no nonsense nursing. I get a little bit impatient when people repeat the same thing. So we know this is going to happen. We know that if we don't prepare, that this is going to be the outcome. So then don't prepare then. If you know that's potentially going to happen, like always having a snack, always. And the good thing is that Noah's new rugby team are brilliant. He wasn't very well at the weekend and he couldn't play rugby, and they were so understanding, and they were, they got it totally in a way maybe his old rugby clubs weren't. So so they know what happens. They give him a I don't know if you have it in Canada, they give him a Mars bar before the game. They have it, so they know that he needs to know that having the exercise is going to make him go low. They know this. So that is one of the good things, is that he talks about it more, so people know that that's part of his life. And I think, yes, as a continuing thing that's part of your life, it's living with it. You're living with diabetes, and I think that's your title, isn't it? Being living and impacted with it, is that it's going to have an impact, and and people need to know about it. And I also think, so from my work around diversity and inclusion, that that your employers, the people around you, they need to make accommodations for them, not excuses, but accommodations for this continuing. I don't like to call it an illness, but I can't think of a better word. But it's a condition, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And and some people have conditions, and that you live with them.
I love that. I love that advice about letting people know. That's so important. But yet, it's been my experience. I'd love to hear both your opinions on this. That some people are not happy to share this. Some people keep this a secret. Some people have different feelings about this condition. This condition that is all of a sudden part of their lives, right? Well, and they're not proud of it. They're not going, especially.
Well, they look at it. They look at it as weakness.
Yeah,
they look at it as weakness. Our world does not accept weakness well. It's actually the contrary, right? And we were just talking about it, but I really want to be clear. Acceptance versus resistance to where we are at is a critical success factor, because if you're not able to accept that I am who I am, or I am where I am, then you have no ability to change, to embrace what's coming next. You're just going to resist it. And unfortunately, diabetes is like a tsunami. You are not going to be able to tell it what to do, right? So that leads to a question that's right now on the screen. It's how important, Dawn, Bob, for the people that living with diabetes, is it that they accept who they are, where they are, so that they can realize I'm not alone, whether it's be other diabetics, like in our community, or just family and friends or workers. That awareness for them helps me, if I'm using me as the example, or helps Noah, like you said with the other rugby team. So what are your thoughts on that? How does this apply to us both?
I've noticed some people wear their diabetes like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm diabetic. And it's just like a sense of pride. I'm beating this every day. It's a challenge, right? It's a challenge every day. Everybody around them knows. And others, especially type 2 and pre-diabetics, it's embarrassment. It's the other way around. It's embarrassment.
Yeah.
It's kindness. It's secrecy. It's, I don't want people to know, because that's that guilt again, I think, or something's there. And wow, what a mindset change.
Agreed.
To embrace it and see it as a challenge, and seeing something that you're dealing with every day. That's the only way you can get support.
I guess so. I think there's something around health beliefs, and there's something around how people manage things. I have noticed with Noah, and I, you know, he probably gets it from me because I'm the same. Sometimes you believe you can change things by sheer force of personality, and as you said, Heath, that's not possible with diabetes. Because it's like trying to change the weather. It's impossible. The weather's the weather,
Yeah.
and that's the way.
Yeah, no, you're bang on. It's a process. That's the interesting part. As a nurse, right? You understand that the body has systems. It actually doesn't know the difference between the 5 stresses: physical, mental, emotional, social, or environmental. It doesn't know. All it knows is, I'm stressed, I need to do this. And it runs through different processes, without going into the science of it, right? That our body works at. Well, guess what that means? If we as diabetics and those supporting us understand those systems, those processes, we can actually develop routines and processes that you mentioned earlier through communication of what we can do. i.e., my wife knows if I'm getting low and I say, I need something, we've already pre-planned it. I have apple juice, I have juice boxes, we have dextrose tabs, we have a multitude of options available based on the circumstance to help rectify the challenge. So that's brilliant what you've said, is that resistance is futile. The other thing you said that I really, really want to sort of dive into here is accountability versus victimhood. This is a powerful thinking mindset that we have. Yeah. And I do both. I fall below the line. I throw my little temper tantrums of nobody gets me, all this when I'm having a really bad day. But the truth is, it's a human condition. Diabetes enhances it. But if I have good process, which Bob, you've observed in my life,
and good support
and amazing support, that I can effectively manage this condition and live an uncommon diabetic life. What do you think about that, building good routines?
I think so I'm a great advocate, and I'm the same as everybody else and feel very sorry for myself at times. I think when we're feeling like that about any situation, it's you have to step into your power and what can you do. So what is in your control? So diabetes, type 1 diabetes, is not in Noah's control. We are where we are, but what he can do is prepare. What he can do is have the snacks around. What he can do is tell people that he might be affected. That's what he can do. He can eat regularly. He can try and eat the things that aren't so bad for him. He knows what affects him, and he can do, and he can make some choices. And if you're the sort of person who thinks you can change the world by the sheer force of personality, it's actually empowering to be able to know what you can do as opposed to what you can't do, what's not in your control. Heath and I have spoken about, because Noah plays rugby, he has to run his life a little bit differently because of the physiological effects of doing exercise. So but we know this from the science, so we change our behavior, and that's what we do, and that makes things much, much better. And that it's sort of to have the support and the knowledge to be able to do that. And also, I think if you are living with somebody with diabetes or any serious illness, what you can do is know what helps, what's normal, what's not normal, and what do you do when things aren't normal. I say that to people about pain relief, about anything. If you feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated, so you need to drink. So, but what you can do is make sure you drink enough during the day. So it applies to everything, really. But what
that's good advice.
Good advice.
That's good advice. Really good. Support. That support thing so important. Like if you're in the life of a diabetic, I think taking the time to be more knowledgeable about diabetes is absolutely essential if you're close to that person. As an example, we went on a 16K hike this weekend. And so I'm quite knowledgeable about diabetes, but Heath is an elite athlete today, I think stronger than he's probably ever been, but still I'm quite aware that he's a diabetic. So before the hike starts, I have extra snacks for him in my backpack. I asked him before we went on the hike, I said, how are you feeling today? Like strength, how's your blood sugar? And he said, fine. He checked it. And he showed off his technology to me and said, right. And he's proud. Like he says, you guys should see my A1C. Yeah. It's like, my nurse said it's the best it's ever been.
That's right.
And I said, good. Then I said, listen, as we go, we can come back at any time. We don't have to do this whole loop, like this whole 16K. We can just go as far as we got. And he goes, yeah, right. And then halfway through, I do another check. I did another check with him. I said, are you still good? How are you feeling? I'm doing great. Then we stop for a snack and finish the hike. That's that support, right?
That's huge. And he does it. Bob does it really well, having been with me for a long time. So he's not telling me, he's asking, where are you at? What's happening, right? But ultimately, I have to be accountable. I have to define what my good blood sugar is. I have to say, my goal is this, and I'm going on that hike with Bob. So what do I need? And everything he did was being good support. He prepared just in case I forgot, right? But I did. I got my glucometer. I've got my app that's telling me real time with my CGM, right? What is it where my blood sugar is at, so I can be on it and make better decisions easier. But it really is our mindset. So it's always back to routines. And you hear me, I'm always talking about routines drive our results. And I really believe in two things. One, chance favors a prepared mind. And two, that we can predict our future by creating it. But what are you talking about creating? Routines, processes. For me, it's the treadmill. I never stop talking about this. Why? It's transformed my life. And I've seen it in many people. You know, in our conversations with Noah, just a few little tidbits with him in our conversations, and you've seen a shift, right? And it only takes one or two little routines to be able to move from weight gaining to weight losing. You talked about water. You talked about a choice of the snack. These are many micro choices that we make every day as humans. But if I choose to have that simple carb or complex carb, nice vegetables and fruits versus the chocolate bar or the white bread or whatever it might be, it does have an impact. So again, I'm babbling a bit on this whole routine thing, but what I guess I'm going to ask you is, what specific strategies as a nurse and as a mother would you recommend that can really help impact those living with diabetes to really transform their life and help those that are supporting them?
So what I know from my work and from living with Noah and meeting people like you, Heath, is you need to know what works for you, but it's also useful to know what has worked for other people. So, you know, you gave an example that you spoke to Noah and he made some tweaks, which I have noticed that he's made tweaks around the type of bread that we have and the type of snack that we have, or how he prepares for a rugby match. And that is role modeling, you know, people who are doing it well. So I'm a great one. So if we've got a problem in work, at home, where who's doing this well, who's managing this well, who, you know, what do they do, and if I did that, what would change for me to do that? And you can, you know, this is a bit datery, but you know, like I said earlier, if you know how you feel when things aren't going well, you need to take notice of how you feel when things are going really good. So how do you feel? And then you can notice when things are different. So if you change your diet, for example, if you decide to eat 3 meals a day instead of being ad hoc about it, do you feel better when you do that?
Right.
Do you feel better if you make sure you drink enough? Do you feel better if you have lots of snacks during the day rather than not having snacks during the day? And you're almost testing out what is the right thing for you depending on your circumstances. But my biggest advice is, where does it work well? As I've said before, there is a player in the England rugby team who's got type 1 diabetes. What does he do? How does he manage it? And that's my advice to know, or anybody like that. Whether you're a housewife, whether you're working full time, what do people who manage it really well and are living their best life with diabetes, what are they doing?
Love it.
Great advice.
I love, what I'm really hearing you say, and you and I have had conversations about this, in our conversation with Beiruz, the entrepreneur's doctor, the power of proximity is critical. If we want to have what others do have, we have to be willing to do what they do. So those that have the success or the lifestyle that we want, we need to get around them so that we can learn. It's like osmosis. It just happens if we're around. The way they eat, we start to copy and eat that. The way they think, we start to copy it. And that's why when we were all kids, our parents would say, you are not hanging out with Johnny, because that is the power of proximity. It works both ways. So any of you out there that are living with and impacted by diabetes, whether it's an actual diabetic or it's a family member, connecting in community is key. Wouldn't you agree?
Definitely. And there's support there, because even in, I know the conversations we've had, sort of like, how do you manage this? What's this situation? It's been so helpful to me that you had a similar journey to Noah. So I know what to expect. And I also know that it's going to be okay. We're going to get there in the end, and we are getting there. And it's also good to know that people have been in worse situations and survived, and and come through it, and that people have been depressed, and people have gone to very low places but have come back, and that's so for me, it's interesting because he's my son. He'll always be my baby, but he's a man, and he's got to find his way, and he's got to learn how to live with this and prosper, and sort of as part of his life. That's unfortunately, it's not going to change. So we have to make the best of what. And that's the human condition, isn't it, really? Things are thrown at us and we deal with it, or we don't. But if you want to stay alive, and I remember Noah telling me, I don't want to be a type 1 diabetic, and I said exactly what you said. Well, you are, and we've got to deal with it.
Yeah, when you get diabetes, it's you, right? You don't. I didn't know any diabetic people until I met Heath, right? I probably passed them in the night, but I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're a diabetic. You've got this giant learning curve, and proximity is a great idea, but you're isolated, right? You don't know any diabetics. You don't know about communities. You don't know about groups. But with the internet today, that's possible, right? 100%. There are lots of support groups available. So, but it does take courage to reach out. It takes initiative to reach out. And to find the right group is a special thing. It's not, just like your son and his rugby team, right? One's a good fit, one's not a good fit.
Yeah,
so finding the right group's really a special process. So viewers and listeners, if you're watching this, I mean, that search is a powerful search, and we would encourage you to reach out, to find your group, your community, and that works for you.
Definitely. And it is about, you find out what you're like as a person. So some people would say they don't like a group, but they would get community from watching something like this, you know. So, you know, if you're in an isolated area and you can't get to a group, and, you know, so I love social media, I love the internet, and there's so much information you can get, and, you know, and you have to be discerning, and you have to get what you need at the right time for you. We all go through seasons, and there's times when you want to know everything, and there's times where you just need enough to survive. And, you know, and then, you know, so you might not be ready for a group now, but you might be ready for a group in a few months' time, or a year's time, or something like that, or when you're at a different time of your life. Like if you know, I know if you're a diabetic and you're a female, that, you know, pregnancy is an issue, and that would be a really good time to be part of a group. So, you know, that is, you know, it's at different seasons and different people. So it's been fantastic for Noah to meet Heath, because he's an athlete, and so they have that in common. So, you know, and we did struggle with that, so it was a blessing to meet Heath, absolute blessing to meet Heath, because I didn't know anybody that was accessible, that had a similar experience, and it's been really, really good. So, and sometimes you struggle with those sorts of things, because as he said, nobody knows what it's like to be you, and, you know, your particular story, and how it's impacting on you, and what plans you had for your life, and how it was going to be. And, you know, even going on holiday and having to take all the paraphernalia with you through customs. I remember the first time Noah had to do that, it was like, it was a saga, you know. But, you know, that's the new life, and that's, you know, and it'll come to second nature. And as he becomes a more mature man, he'll be able to teach others. And you know, that's my hope for Noah, that he'll be able to show people the way, because of his story and because of his journey. And if I can do the same for people who are impacted, that's really good too.
You know, Dawn, this is really powerful, because we're all on a journey. Diabetes as a whole, that's really all it is. It's a journey. It doesn't need to be my identity. I'm okay. I'm one of those few that says I am a diabetic. Some people really do not like labels at all. And that's why this phrasing around living with diabetes is important, because you don't have to be defined. However, for me, I can only speak for me, I'm good with it. I've come to a realization in my letting the old Heath go and taking on the new diabetic, for me, mantra, because I want to be an uncommon diabetic. And I'm so focused on trying to learn from others, to help others realize that together we can change our thinking, our mindset. We can gain uncommon sense and really know that we can transform our thoughts, our beliefs, which then drives our feelings and our actions, right? Those feelings and thoughts we have are going to affect our fuel, the things we choose to eat. Why? Because we believe that it's good for us, or we believe whatever it is around it, that we can change that and understand that it will drive the fuel that drives our performance, that uncommon performance in our life. How do we move our bodies? And I've got people that I'm helping that it's literally just get up and go for a walk. That is all that's required. And then I have the privilege of working with a Noah at a higher level and talking with him and go, hey, you're at the professional level. You're living an uncommon diabetic life. However, that requires uncommon routines now to do that, right? And those are the things that we're working on together. So this performance side also comes back to just being okay with where we are and allowing ourselves time to rest, to recover. So I've just described the 4 pillars that we teach in our program that we've been talking about, Dawn, with Noah, and how we can really build the foundations to an uncommon diabetic life in our uncommon diabetic community and in our programs and our education, training, and mentorship. But it starts with being accountable, saying, I can, I will, and I must. That's what happened for me, is I had to get to the place where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I had to choose to step forward on the first step of the lifelong journey and just do one at a time. So as a nurse, I'd really like, your thoughts on just that one step principle, because my personality was one I was trying to always jump. When I first became a diabetic, I got so frustrated because I was used to being invincible, right? I was 25. I was like Noah. What do you mean I can't do that? I'm going to resist. I'll prove them wrong. Nope. There's processes in place that the body does to protect us, and unfortunately, it sometimes hurts us. So what is it that could really help all of us living with diabetes from your professional perspective, and as a mother, and as you as a friend and a colleague, that we could do to move forward towards that uncommon process?
Where do we start?
Yeah, where do we start in your mind? That one step.
I think so. As everything, I would say start slate clean every day. And how is today going to be a good day? How can I make today a good day? How do I feel today? How do I want to feel today? And what do I need to do so that I feel good today? That I feel how I want to feel. Does that mean I need to drink more? Does that mean I need to eat better? Does that mean I need to, reach out to people? Does it mean I need to tell people how I feel? It's not saying that every day you're going to feel great. Some days you're not going to feel great, and that's just human. But what is going to help you have the best day today, and just do that one day at a time. So one day you might want to get more information. One day you might want to talk to a mentor. One day you might want to do some exercise. But I think it's really important to give yourself grace, to accept, and that you're human, that you make mistakes, but start with a clean slate every day and just think, what's the one thing I can do today that's going to make my day better?
I'm voting for a nap. Okay, that's what I'm doing.
If you need a nap,
that's right.
You need a nap.
A lot of people need to nap, and they don't nap, and then they just run out of energy, man.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's very easy to get overwhelmed. It is overwhelming, but what can you do? Step into your power. And what can you do? I think is the best advice I would give. And what support systems are around you? What do you know? What do you need to know? But just do one thing at a time.
Yeah, you friends and mums and dads and bosses, work associates that are living with diabetes, people with diabetes. Those are good questions to ask. All the things you just said, those are great questions to ask of the person that you're working with. What can I do today? What can I do to support you today to have your best day, right? And even in the workplace, if you want a highly productive employee, a person that's engaged, a person that's focused, I mean, there should be a nap room. There should be rest during the day for diabetics. There should be.
Yeah.
Well, you just said something powerful, right? Is knowing where you're at, and something that I've implemented, and this is science proved. Dr. Sean Richardson speaks on rest and recovery for energy health all the time, right? He's on our team in our UD team. Micro breaks. Bob calls it the nap, but the real truth is that might be listening to Calm and doing some meditation. That might mean dropping and doing 10 or 20 push-ups or whatever. But these micro breaks will change our state. It changes our thinking. It changes the processes that are going on in our body to work for us, not against us, right? And what do you think of those micro breaks?
I think they're a really good idea. So sometimes, and I did it this morning. Actually, I had a really busy day. So it's nearly 9 p.m. in the UK, and I went and did a in-person sort of what we call lunch and learn with an organization, and it was in person, so that was quite stressful. I had to travel there, which was quite stressful. I decided not to drive. I decided to go by public transport, and then I knew I had this later. So when I woke up this morning, I was quite stressed, and what I advise other people when they are like that is to just sit with it. And that's like, I don't nap. Actually, I've never napped. I wish I could. I can't. But I sometimes think, and I don't naturally meditate either. But what I do is sit with it for a minute, because I'm a great one. Unless someone's dying, you can sit. You can take some time and think about what's going to happen, what needs to happen. Is it everything that I was stressing about? I was stressing about, should I do a presentation? Should I do this? Blah, blah, blah. Should I get early? And then I realized I don't need to do a presentation. I can do this without doing a presentation. And, I can just change the way that I do it and just sit with it. And if you think about it, and I suppose it is meditation, and to think, what do I have to do? What do I need to do? What do I want to do? And then sort of make your plan from that, and sort of like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
That's our brains. That's our brain playing tricks on us, isn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
That fear in the back of our brain, their primitive brain, just takes over. It's like, and it does. It drives these levels of anxiety, frustration, and depression in us. And if we take that time, like you're recommending, and think it through, there's probably no real reason to be fearful at all.
And it's
how did the workshop go?
It went brilliantly. Absolutely brilliantly. And I said, so they'd set up a projector and everything. They were filming it, which I was fine with. And I said, what I'd prefer is we sat around and had a conversation. And I did exactly the same content, but I had it as a conversation. And and I actually might do a presentation, because it was very useful what we were talking about. But I said, so people have expectations, and it's really good to articulate those expectations. But just because someone articulates expectation doesn't mean you've got to do it. Do what you can, and what's within your what's within your power to do. And if you explain, that's okay, because as long as you give the service that you promised, that's okay. And I think me and Noah are the same. We're perfectionists, and we want to give everything, and we want everything to be perfect. And you sort of need to let that go a bit. And I think that's a lesson that I'm continuing to learn. So I'm in my 50s, so it's a lot to expect a 24-year-old to be like I'm double his age. So but it's something that I find, just sit with things. What's the worst thing that can happen? So when I was working, because I worked in intensive care, so my standard around a good day was if no one died. And sometimes it still is the standard. Did anybody die? No, that's a good day. So, that's a good day.
This is such brilliant lessons to learn, right? And that we're all, it's a human condition, at choice on the fear. I'm an acronym king, being that ex-police officer and things like that. And that false evidence, right, that appears real, or false events that appear real. As you said in your story here today, it always works out. Because if it's not worked out, that means it's just working itself out. Yeah, and we are right where we need to be as diabetics, as people living with and impacted by diabetes, or just going around and being grateful for the opportunity to learn today, right? Really, we're on a fantastic adventure in learning, which means we got to fail. That's where we learn the most. So failing doesn't really exist in my mind. It's that fantastic adventure in learning that together we can, right? And stepping forward, having these great mindsets that you're talking about. I'm really grateful for your time today, Dawn. And I really want to thank you and Bob for this discussion. I know we're going to do this again and have more discussion to try and help people that are impacted by diabetes. Because I think even though not everybody is a diabetic, obviously, only 1 in 3 in North America are. That's a high number, right? But the point is, that means that majority aren't. But we are all around people. It's a big enough number that we got to be aware of how me as a diabetic is impacting my family, my friends, my colleagues. And likewise, in return, how can I help and support? Because together, we can create an uncommon life or uncommon diabetic life. So where can people find you and learn more about you, Dawn? And just tell us a little bit about that and what you got.
Okay, so I love social media, so I'm a social media queen, and so you can find me on Dawn. If you Google Dawn Jarvis, you will find me. My website is www.dawnjarvis.com, and I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube because I do a podcast. So you'll find me there. One of the things that I love doing is networking with people. So that's how I met Heath and Bob, through sort of like communities. I love to learn. So yeah, so usually that's how people find me. They DM me, on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or somewhere like that. So that's where you can find me.
Excellent.
Bob, do you have any thoughts or closing remarks?
Well, just the listeners and viewers would be pretty impressed with Dawn. And I know that she does an excellent diversity, inclusion, and workshops, right? And that's a hot topic. Every company needs that these days. So reach out to Dawn, folks, and give her a dingle. Good.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun working with you. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, I had a great time. And yeah. So, and I include diabetes as part of diversity and inclusion because of the disabling effects it can have in your life and in your work. And that, as we talked about, it's really important that your colleagues and your organization make accommodation for people who are living with this condition.
Yeah,
definitely.
Brilliant.
Dawn, I'm excited about the future of us doing this again, and also working and learning together, right, as we travel through this journey to empower people living with and impacted by diabetes. So, for all of you viewers that are watching this or watching this on a replay, I just want you to know that we have an amazing and growing community at uncommondiabetic.com, right? Come, check us out. You can find us at uncommondiabetic.com, and you can actually take advantage of our free offers. One in particular that I want to talk about right now is our free Transform workshop. Thursday, 4 p.m. Join me, join Bob, and learn about the 4 pillars that will build the foundations of an uncommon diabetic life, and how this journey really just begins with one step. One choice. And together we can predict our futures and create that uncommon diabetic life. So I also would really like to let you know that subscribe, click the bell, check us out on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and learn about all the other services we provide at Uncommon Diabetic Solutions. We're here. We want to grow and just journey on this just journey with you. So thank you very much for today. And thank you again to Dawn. And until next week on Uncommon Diabetic TV, right? Be uncommon.
Thanks, Dawn. You're very welcome. That was good.
It was fun, eh? You've got great presence, excellent